The federal courthouse in Alexandria was buzzing with an energy that hinted at something extraordinary about to unfold. Courtroom 14A was packed to capacity not just with lawyers and staff, but with an eager press corps and onlookers, sensing they were about to witness a historic moment. At the center of this storm stood Judge Anthony Trenga, a man whose reputation for strict courtroom control was well known. At 63, Judge Trenga had built a career on running a tight ship. His courtroom was no place for nonsense. But today, the atmosphere was different. There was an electric tension in the air, an undercurrent of something bigger than the usual judicial business. As he entered the room, Trenga's usual stern demeanor seemed even more pronounced. His sharp eyes scanned the room with a penetrating glare, making it clear that he was ready to assert control and make this day count. Across the room, standing confidently at the defense table, was Pam Bondi, former Attorney General of Florida and now the lead defense counsel in a case that had already drawn national attention. Pam wasn't just any attorney. Known for her tenacity and sharp legal mind, she had earned both allies and adversaries throughout her political and legal career. At 59, she carried herself with poise and professionalism. Her navy suit, perfectly tailored. Blonde hair pulled back neatly, every bit the picture of a seasoned legal warrior. The tension between Bondi and Judge Trenga was palpable from the very start. The courtroom was hushed as the judge shuffled through papers, his jaw clenched tightly. His reputation for running a no-nonsense courtroom preceded him, but today, it felt like he was preparing for a confrontation that would shake more than just this room. As the judge called the court to order and announced the start of arguments on a defense motion to dismiss, the eyes of every person present turned toward Bondi. She rose gracefully, accepting the unspoken challenge. Trenga, however, didn't hide his skepticism or disdain. His voice, when he spoke, was sharp, laced with an edge that set the tone for what was about to become a heated battle of wills. "Miss Bondi, you may proceed," he said, but not without warning her against any theatrical gestures. The subtle but pointed reminder was clear: this courtroom was a place of order, not spectacle. But Bondi was undeterred. The stage was set, and both knew this would be a fight not just of legal arguments, but of determination and grit. The press scribbled notes furiously, knowing they were witnessing the opening act of an epic courtroom drama, one that would captivate a nation and challenge the very pillars of judicial integrity. The moment Pam Bondi stood at the podium, the courtroom held its breath. Judge Anthony Trenga's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening with barely concealed hostility. From the start, it was clear this was not going to be a routine hearing. Bondi's voice was calm but firm as she began laying out the defense's motion to dismiss. "Your Honor, the charges against our client lack a fundamental legal foundation," she stated clearly, her tone measured and precise. She didn't just speak as a lawyer defending her client. She spoke as a seasoned fighter who had faced far greater storms. But before she could finish her thought, Trenga cut her off sharply, leaning forward with a predator's intensity. "Are you seriously going to waste this court's time with procedural technicalities?" he snapped. His voice carried a venom that sent ripples through the room. Attorneys exchanged uneasy glances, sensing this confrontation was escalating beyond standard courtroom debate. The insult hung heavy in the air. Trenga accused Bondi of bending rules to serve political masters, implying her legal maneuvers were more about spectacle than substance. It was a personal attack disguised as judicial reprimand. Yet Bondi remained composed, meeting his glare without flinching. "Your Honor," she replied evenly, "zealous advocacy should not be mistaken for impropriety. Our motion rests on well-established precedents within this district." Her steady eyes locked with the judge's, challenging him without raising her voice. Trenga's face reddened, his temper visibly fraying. "Don't lecture me about precedent in my courtroom," he shot back. "I've been practicing law longer than you've held any office. Your history of political gamesmanship is well documented." The prosecution team shifted uncomfortably, the room buzzing with whispered speculation. Was this judge crossing a line? Was his conduct impartial? It was rare to see such overt disdain from the bench, and observers recognized the stakes were rising fast. Bondi didn't respond with anger. Instead, she appealed to fairness. "May we focus on the merits of the motion rather than personal characterizations? The defendant's constitutional rights deserve protection based on law, not politics." The subtle reprimand only fueled Trenga's fury. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the bench, trembling slightly. The morning had barely begun, yet the courtroom was already a battleground. Trenga's voice dropped to a menacing whisper that still carried across the room. "This is not a political rally for grandstanding. I will not tolerate any attorney turning this court into a circus." The tension thickened. Several attorneys shifted in their seats, sensing the thin line between order and chaos was slipping. The judge's warning was clear, a threat wrapped in legal authority. Bondi met it head-on with unwavering calm. "Your Honor, any contempt proceedings must be based on specific misconduct, not general disapproval. We have complied with all procedural rules and remain committed to justice." The courtroom sat on edge, the duel between judge and lawyer unfolding like a chess match where every word carried weight. What began as a routine hearing was rapidly transforming into a defining momenta test of justice itself. The courtroom atmosphere had reached a boiling point. Judge Anthony Trenga, his patience worn thin, was now openly confronting Pam Bondi with sharp accusations. His voice echoed through the wood-paneled room, laced with frustration and rising anger. "Miss Bondi," he barked, "your conduct borders on contempt of court. Your filings show a clear pattern of obstructing justice through procedural abuse. And your public statements? They're designed to prejudice jurors and undermine the integrity of these proceedings." The gravity of the accusations hung heavy in the air. Contempt of court was no light matter. It could lead to fines or even jail time. Yet, the courtroom couldn't ignore how vague and sweeping these claims seemed. There was no clear evidence pointed to specific acts, only a broad charge of disrespect. Bondi remained composed, her hands resting lightly on the podium. Years of political battles and courtroom wars had honed her ability to stay calm under fire. She met the judge's gaze steadily and responded with measured respect. "Your Honor," she began, "I respectfully request that you specify the instances of alleged misconduct. The defense has complied fully with all applicable rules and procedures." Her voice, calm yet firm, seemed only to further unsettle the judge. In a sudden outburst, Trenga slammed his hand on the bench, making nearby observers jump. "Contempt of court, Miss Bondi. That's what I'm talking about," he roared. "Your continued attempts to manipulate these proceedings and your disrespectful tone threaten the administration of justice." Whispers rippled through the courtroom. Some attorneys exchanged nervous glances. Reporters scribbled frantically. Even members of the prosecution team looked uneasy, caught between loyalty to the court and discomfort with the judge's tone. But Bondi did not back down. Instead, she took a step closer, her demeanor unyielding. "Your Honor," she said clearly, "accusations of this seriousness demand specific evidence. Broad generalizations are not grounds for contempt. Our motions were filed timely, cited properly, and followed all procedural standards. Any statements made to the media addressed legal principles, not case specifics." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the room. "Your characterizations appear based on assumptions rather than fact. We understand this case is politically sensitive, but due process and judicial neutrality must never be compromised, regardless of public pressure." The judge's face flushed purple, his knuckles white from gripping the bench so tightly. The courtroom was tense, the battle lines drawn. Bondi's calm logic was slicing through the judge's fury. It was clear to all present that she was not only defending her client, but also holding the court itself accountable. The audience realized this was more than a fight over procedure. It was a stand for fairness and the rule of law. As the courtroom tension simmered, Pam Bondi shifted gears. With the calm confidence of a seasoned attorney who had prepared for every contingency, she began to unveil a startling truth-tone that threatened to shake the very foundation of the court. "Your Honor," Bondi began, her voice steady and authoritative, "during our case preparation, we uncovered troubling patterns that raise serious questions about judicial impartiality in this very courtroom." The courtroom fell silent, the weight of her words settling over everyone present. Even the reporters leaned forward, sensing the gravity of what was about to be revealed. Bondi opened a thick manila folder and laid it gently on the podium. "In the past 18 months," she continued, "this court has issued rulings in politically sensitive cases that are inconsistent with well-established legal standards and contrary to decisions by other judges in this district." She listed examples with surgical precision. In United States v. Patterson, this court denied a motion to suppress evidence that was granted by every other judge in the district. In United States v. Patterson, Vero Rodriguez, the court imposed a sentence 3 times higher than federal guidelines, which was later overturned on appeal. A murmur ran through the courtroom as the audience absorbed these revelations. In United States v. Chen, the court refused a continuance that led to inadequate defense preparation, resulting in a conviction that was ultimately reversed. Bondi's voice took on a sharper edge. These cases share 2 common traits: defendants with political connections the court appears to disfavor, and judicial overreach that suggests personal bias rather than fair application of the law. She paused to let the weight of her accusation sink in before continuing. Most concerning, Bondi said, are the apparent financial conflicts of interest that may have influenced these rulings. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a second folder marked with red tabs. Public records reveal significant financial investments held by Your Honor in companies that have benefited from favorable court decisions. A collective gasp echoed through the courtroom. The implications were staggering. Financial conflicts of interest, especially in a federal judge, could lead to criminal investigations and the invalidation of past rulings. Bondi detailed suspicious financial activity aligned with key court decisions. These findings demand a full review of cases presided over by this court in recent years. Judge Trenga's composure began to crack. His face paled as he stared at the mounting evidence. The weight of the accusations was undeniable. The prosecution team exchanged uneasy glances. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. The atmosphere had shifted from tense to electric. Bondi concluded firmly, "We hereby request Your Honor's immediate recusal from this case and a comprehensive investigation into the integrity of past proceedings." For the first time, the courtroom felt the unmistakable shift. The battle had moved beyond legal arguments into exposing potential corruption at the heart of the justice system. Just when it seemed the courtroom drama couldn't escalate further, Pam Bondi reached into her briefcase and produced a sealed envelope. The eyes of everyone present locked onto the package, sensing the weight it carried. "Your Honor," Bondi said with quiet authority, "what I am about to disclose comes from a credible whistleblower within the federal judiciary. This information concerns the integrity of these proceedings and goes far beyond what has already been discussed." Judge Anthony Trenga's face paled, his usual sternness replaced by visible alarm. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence, anticipation thick in the air. Bondi carefully broke the seal and opened the envelope. She pulled out a series of documents, affidavits, and recordings, holding them up so the cameras could capture the moment. Reporters scrambled to record, sensing history in the making. The contents detailed specific instances of judicial misconduct, including coordination between the judge and prosecution teams that undermined the defendant's right to a fair trial. There were emails revealing prearranged strategies and conversations that suggested predetermined outcomes. "This affidavit," Bondi declared, "includes recorded conversations, email correspondences, and financial records painting a clear picture of systemic corruption." The prosecution team shifted uncomfortably as murmurs filled the courtroom. Legal analysts in the gallery whispered about the explosive nature of these revelations. Trenga attempted to regain control, his voice trembling as he ordered Bondi to cease her presentation. "You are in contempt of court," he warned. But Bondi cut him off, her tone firm. "Your Honor, given the evidence presented, I believe your authority to hold anyone in contempt is significantly compromised," she replied, her words like a judicial sword piercing through the judge's defenses. Bondi then laid out the details of the investigation that had been quietly unfolding behind the scenes. The Department of Justice, the FBI, and the Court of Appeals have all been informed. Formal complaints have been filed with congressional oversight committees and judicial ethics bodies. As the gravity of the situation settled, an unexpected development stunned everyone. A group of federal agents entered the courtroom. Leading them was Special Agent Patricia Martinez of the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. Agent Martinez approached the bench with the authority of the law itself. "Your Honor, we are here pursuant to an ongoing investigation into allegations of judicial misconduct, corruption, and violations of civil rights." Trenga's composure shattered. He stammered protests about court procedure and scheduling, but Martinez's response was firm and unwavering. "This investigation requires immediate action," she stated, signaling her team to proceed. The atmosphere turned surreal. The man who had spent years enforcing the law was now under its shadow. Cameras flashed as agents began executing search warrants and preparing to arrest a sitting federal judge. Bondi stepped back, a quiet resolve on her face. She had not only defended her client, but exposed a corruption scandal that reached to the highest levels of the judiciary. The courtroom atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The powerful presence of Special Agent Patricia Martinez and her team from the FBI's Public Corruption Unit transformed the judicial chamber from a place of order into the scene of an unprecedented federal operation. Cameras flashed and whispers filled the air as the agents began executing search warrants on Judge Anthony Trenga's chambers and personal residences. Judge Trenga, once a commanding figure who had wielded the power of the bench with unwavering authority, now looked visibly shaken. His face, which had often displayed stern resolve, was pale and contorted with disbelief. The weight of the allegations and the unfolding events were crushing the once untouchable jurist. As Agent Martinez formally read the charges, her voice echoed clearly throughout the packed courtroom. "Judge Anthony Trenga, you are under arrest for conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of law, bribery of a federal official, and obstruction of justice." The magnitude of the moment was not lost on anyone present. The man who had threatened to jail Pam Bondi less than hours ago was now being handcuffed in his own courtroom. The irony was sharp, a real-life drama unfolding before the eyes of a stunned audience. Trenga attempted to protest, his voice shaky. "This is a mistake. I am a federal judge. You cannot arrest me here." Agent Martinez's tone was calm but firm. "Judicial immunity does not extend to criminal acts. You must comply with the arrest." With slow, deliberate movements, Trenga rose from his seat. The black robes he had worn proudly for years now hung loosely on his diminished frame. The sound of metal cuffs clicking shut around his wrists reverberated through the chamber like a verdict on his career. As agents escorted him towards the courtroom exit, reporters shouted questions. "Judge Trenga, do you have a statement? Will you resign?" Trenga offered no response, his steps unsteady. The powerful image of a judge stripped of authority and escorted away under arrest left an indelible mark on everyone present. Outside, the courthouse steps became a media frenzy. News of the arrest spread rapidly across all major networks. Analysts described the event as historic, a dramatic fall from grace for a federal judge, and a stark reminder that no one is above the law. Inside the now empty courtroom, the echo of Bondi's courageous stand lingered. Her unyielding commitment to justice had not only defended her client but also sparked a wave of accountability that reached to the highest echelons of the judiciary. The ripple effects of this case promised to be profound, igniting conversations about judicial ethics, transparency, and the fundamental principles that uphold the American justice system. The dramatic arrest of Judge Anthony Trenga sent shockwaves far beyond the walls of the Alexandria Federal Courthouse. News outlets nationwide scrambled to cover the unprecedented event. A sitting federal judge handcuffed and led away in custody during a live courtroom proceeding. For many, it was a stark reminder that no one, regardless of rank or status, is above the law. Within hours, social media platforms erupted with discussions, debates, and expressions of disbelief. Legal experts weighed in, calling the case a watershed moment in the fight against corruption within the justice system. Veteran correspondent Sarah Mitchell, covering federal courts for over 3 decades, remarked, "In all my years, I have never witnessed judicial misconduct exposed so publicly and so thoroughly in real time." Back at the courthouse, the empty courtroom bore silent witness to the storm that had just passed. The lingering scent of tension and the echoes of Bondi's steadfast defense remained palpable. Her fearless confrontation of judicial overreach and her role in unveiling systemic corruption elevated her status not just as a lawyer, but as a symbol of integrity and resilience. The Department of Justice announced immediate steps to review every case presided over by Judge Trenga during his tenure. Thousands of cases were flagged for potential reevaluation, igniting hope among those who believed past verdicts had been tainted by bias or misconduct. Meanwhile, congressional committees called for hearings to assess the judiciary's oversight mechanisms and to consider reforms aimed at preventing such abuses in the future. The case prompted a nationwide conversation about transparency, accountability, and the essential balance between judicial independence and ethical responsibility. For Pam Bondi, the aftermath was a complex mixture of vindication and vigilance. She remained composed amid the media frenzy, emphasizing that the pursuit of justice was never about personal glory but about safeguarding the principles that underpin the legal system. Justice must be blind, but it must also be vigilant, Bondi stated in a brief public comment. This case serves as a reminder that accountability is the cornerstone of trust in our institutions. Public reaction was overwhelmingly supportive of Bondi's courage. Stories poured in from citizens across the country, many sharing their own experiences with the justice system and expressing hope that this case marked the beginning of meaningful change. Yet the road ahead was clear. Rebuilding trust in the judiciary would require sustained effort, transparency, and a recommitment to the highest ethical standards. As the dust settled, one thing was certain: the courtroom drama that unfolded in Alexandria was more than a legal spectacle. It was a pivotal moment in the nation's ongoing journey toward justice, fairness, and integrity. The dramatic arrest of Judge Anthony Trenga sent shockwaves far beyond the walls of the Alexandria Federal Courthouse. News outlets nationwide scrambled to cover the unprecedented event. A sitting federal judge handcuffed and led away in custody during a live courtroom proceeding. For many, it was a stark reminder that no one, regardless of rank or status, is above the law. Within hours, social media platforms erupted with discussions, debates, and expressions of disbelief. Legal experts weighed in, calling the case a watershed moment in the fight against corruption within the justice system. Veteran correspondent Sarah Mitchell, covering federal courts for over 3 decades, remarked, "In all my years, I have never witnessed judicial misconduct exposed so publicly and so thoroughly in real time." Back at the courthouse, the empty courtroom bore silent witness to the storm that had just passed. The lingering scent of tension and the echoes of Bondi's steadfast defense remained palpable. Her fearless confrontation of judicial overreach and her role in unveiling systemic corruption elevated her status not just as a lawyer, but as a symbol of integrity and resilience. The Department of Justice announced immediate steps to review every case presided over by Judge Trenga during his tenure. Thousands of cases were flagged for potential reevaluation, igniting hope among those who believed past verdicts had been tainted by bias or misconduct. Meanwhile, congressional committees called for hearings to assess the judiciary's oversight mechanisms and to consider reforms aimed at preventing such abuses in the future. The case prompted a nationwide conversation about transparency, accountability, and the essential balance between judicial independence and ethical responsibility. For Pam Bondi, the aftermath was a complex mixture of vindication and vigilance. She remained composed amid the media frenzy, emphasizing that the pursuit of justice was never about personal glory but about safeguarding the principles that underpin the legal system. Justice must be blind, but it must also be vigilant, Bondi stated in a brief public comment. This case serves as a reminder that accountability is the cornerstone of trust in our institutions. Public reaction was overwhelmingly supportive of Bondi's courage. Stories poured in from citizens across the country, many sharing their own experiences with the justice system and expressing hope that this case marked the beginning of meaningful change. Yet the road ahead was clear. Rebuilding trust in the judiciary would require sustained effort, transparency, and a recommitment to the highest ethical standards. As the dust settled, one thing was certain: the courtroom drama that unfolded in Alexandria was more than a legal spectacle. It was a pivotal moment in the nation's ongoing journey toward justice, fairness, and integrity. News of Judge Anthony Trenga's arrest spread like wildfire across the nation. Within minutes, major news outlets interrupted regular programming to broadcast live footage of a federal judge being led away in handcuffs, an image both shocking and unprecedented. The courthouse steps in Alexandria quickly transformed into a chaotic scene, swarmed by journalists, camera crews, and legal analysts eager to capture every moment of this unfolding drama. The reaction was immediate and intense. Social media exploded with hashtags demanding justice and accountability, while legal experts dissected every detail of the case. Commentators debated the broader implications for the federal judiciary, questioning how such a breach of ethics could occur at the highest levels. Veteran legal correspondent Sarah Mitchell, reporting from the scene, remarked, "In my 3 decades covering federal courts, I have never witnessed anything quite like this. The evidence presented today points to a systemic problem that could have far-reaching consequences." The footage of Pam Bondi calmly exposing the allegations and the subsequent FBI arrest of Judge Trenga became viral content, shared and discussed by millions. Bondi's courage resonated widely, casting her as a symbol of integrity fighting corruption within the system. Public opinion was largely supportive of the swift action taken by law enforcement, but it also sparked calls for deeper reforms. Many citizens expressed frustration and concern about how judicial oversight mechanisms had failed to catch the misconduct sooner. Town halls and community forums began to spring up across the country, with citizens demanding transparency and stronger accountability measures within the justice system. Advocacy groups leveraged the moment to push for legislative changes aimed at preventing future abuses of power. Meanwhile, defense attorneys and prosecutors alike grappled with the fallout. Cases previously ruled on by Judge Trenga were now under scrutiny, with potential appeals and retrials looming. For many, the scandal was a stark reminder of the fragility of justice and the need for constant vigilance. Pam Bondi, despite the media spotlight, remained focused on the bigger picture. In interviews, she emphasized that the case was not about personal vendettas, but about upholding the rule of law and restoring public trust. "This is a wake-up call for all of us," she stated. "Justice must be transparent, fair, and accessible to every individual. We cannot allow the actions of one person to undermine the entire system." The nation watched closely as investigations continued, reforms were proposed, and the judicial community faced unprecedented scrutiny. The story of Judge Trenga's downfall became a powerful narrative about accountability, courage, and the relentless pursuit of justice. As the dust settled from the storm that had shaken the Alexandria courthouse, the nation began to reflect on what the dramatic events truly meant for the future of justice. The downfall of Judge Anthony Trenga was more than just the fall of a single man. It marked a pivotal moment in the ongoing struggle to maintain integrity and fairness in the legal system. Pam Bondi's fearless stand against corruption had inspired a renewed commitment to justice. Her insistence on exposing truth, even in the face of hostility and intimidation, became a beacon of hope for lawyers, judges, and citizens alike. It reminded the country that the principles of due process and accountability are not abstract ideals, but living commitments that require constant vigilance. The federal judiciary responded swiftly. New oversight committees were established, tasked with monitoring judges' conduct more closely and ensuring that allegations of misconduct could be investigated with transparency and speed. Training programs emphasizing ethics and impartiality were expanded, with a renewed focus on preventing conflicts of interest. At the legislative level, lawmakers introduced bills aimed at strengthening whistleblower protections, encouraging insiders to come forward without fear of retaliation. Proposals for more rigorous financial disclosure requirements for judges gained bipartisan support, reflecting the widespread recognition that transparency is essential to trust. Across the country, the case sparked conversations in law schools, bar associations, and community forums. Legal professionals debated how best to balance judicial independence with accountability, understanding that protecting the courts from political interference must never come at the cost of justice. Pam Bondi continued her advocacy, speaking at events and engaging with policymakers to ensure the momentum for reform was not lost. "Justice is not self-policing," she reminded audiences. "It demands our active participation to safeguard fairness for all." For many Americans, the story also served as a powerful lesson in the importance of civic engagement. Citizens recognized that a healthy democracy depends on an informed public willing to hold institutions accountable and demand integrity from those entrusted with power. The Alexandria courtroom saga became a symbol, a testament to what can be achieved when courage meets accountability. It underscored the notion that, no matter how high the office, no one is above the law. In the years to come, the reverberations of this case would shape judicial conduct and public expectations. It would serve as a reminder that justice is a continuous journey, one that requires the bravery of individuals and the vigilance of institutions. Ultimately, the dramatic unraveling of Judge Trenga's career became not just a cautionary tale, but a hopeful chapter in America's pursuit of a more just and equitable society.